All right, YouTube, this Detroit's HPTV coming to you out of Detroit, back with another video on this Sunday morning. Today, I want to show you one of the most ridiculous interviews I've seen. This is a so-called Democratic black intellectual who claims to understand the politics and needs of the black community. He claims to be an advocate for the black community. He claims to be an intellectual. But I want you to pay attention to this guy's character. I first seen him on the scene with Roland Martin and other bourgeoisie pundits. But he's one of the type whose arguments is so ridiculous and so race baiting that you can't take him serious. He's like Don Lemon. You remember Don Lemon said that white men were the biggest threat to the country, but then you find out he's married to one. Wrap your mind around that. Here is someone who wants to be an advocate and a spokesperson for the black community, and his diatribe is that white men are the biggest threat to the country, but he's actually married to a white man. Yeah. So you see that their rhetoric and their rants be so duplicitous and race-filled and sensational that they cloud the issue. Now, these people have been coming out telling you, you losing your vote. And all the while, you're not losing any vote. They're just not allowing gerrymandering based on race. So now the playing field is more competitive, and they finding out now that they don't own the black vote. I even had someone tell me, well, the Democrats were going to replace you guys with the Latinos. I said, well, if that was what they were trying to do, good for them, because the Latinos don't trust them and they don't trust the Latinos. So at some point, even their plan of creating a new voting bloc with Latinos was going to fall through, because the Democrats don't want to share power with anyone. They want to consolidate power amongst their own elite. So they were going to betray the Latinos as well. And this is why you see them not even really advocating for the same people that they put in now, because it's all about saving their jobs at this point. Have you noticed they're not talking about immigration? They're not talking about crime. They're talking about voting, because their jobs is at stake. Their rhetoric has fallen on deaf ears. And this guy that I'm going to show you today, Veli Mistel, he is the epitome of why FBA is delineating from immigrants and also the Democratic Party. I want you to watch his character and watch everything he say. Watch his emotional diatribe and look at his character, and you can see why we no longer wish to be on the Democratic Party. When you look at this guy's character, you know he's really angry, not so much as it is about voting. That's not why he's mad at the so-called white man. He's mad because of how this administration feels towards the LGBTQ community. See, it's time out for the co-opting of the civil rights movement with all these other movements, transgender and children, LGBT rights and whatever, immigrant rights or whatever. This is what makes us have to delineate. So I want you to watch and pay attention to this guy, and pay attention to his rhetoric, and pay attention to how he tries to incite with no plan, no goal, other than come vote for the Democratic Party and get nothing. So without further ado, let's get into this clip. It's for fair use under the 1976 Copyright Act for education and commentary and the First Amendment. Watch this guy. And he's talking to Velshi. I think Velshi is an Arab. But look how they discuss us.
Joining me now is Elie Mystal, justice correspondent and columnist for The Nation. He's an Alfred Nobler Fellow at the Type Media Center and author of multiple books, including Bad Law, 10 Popular Laws That Are Ruining America. Elie, good morning to you. Thank you for being with us. I'm trying not to overstate this. I'm trying not to have viewers look at me and say, dude, why is your hair on fire? This is crazy. It's really not. This is a pernicious, across-the-board attack on democracy.
And an attack on black people specifically. A lot of times when I've seen this story framed over the last few weeks, it has been framed as a Democrat versus Republican issue, as a battle for the soul of the House of Representatives. It is not. It is an attack by white people against the very concept of black representation. This is Jim Crow 2.0, and I don't mean that in a kind of hyperbolic way.
You see where he's going? He's saying that because the Democrats failed at a gerrymandering attempt in Virginia, overplayed their hand and appealed to the Supreme Court and forced the Supreme Court to actually rule on the entire subject, that it's an attack on black people. This is what these liberals are telling you. This is why they're putting you in your feelings. This is why you see these lunatics getting in my comments and other influencers' comments full of emotion and acting like they unstable. It's like the Democratic Party has thoroughly brainwashed their base.
Yeah, I mean that on a ground level. Like, what are they actually trying to do?
So let me interrupt you there, because I think this is really important.
One too many pairs of shoes? Sell them on Vinted.
Trying to do.
So let me interrupt you there, because I think this is really important. Jim Crow was not one thing, right? Slavery was not one thing. It was a series. It was hundreds of little things that curtailed people's freedoms, and that's what's happening. That from 1965 onwards, we've fixed a lot of little things, and this administration's taking one thing down at a time.
If you lived in the Jim Crow South as a black person, you could vote as long as you could guess the number of jelly beans. You could vote as long as you could figure out what day, what time. If it, like the way that people are disenfranchised is not saying, darky, you can't vote here. It's all of these little procedural issues that frustrate and suppress the ability of black people to vote, or the ability of those votes to matter. And that's what the Supreme Court has approved. That's what the white supremacist decision in Louisiana versus Calais approved.
Now, they saying that they don't want us to vote. But I've never had a problem with voting. They said that you shouldn't have to have ID. Why shouldn't you have to have ID to vote? You need ID to go to school. You need ID to have a bank account. You need ID for everything. But they said that it was voter suppression because they demanded IDs to vote. Then they came and told you, oh, they're taking women's rights to vote and hurting married women because they're going to have to bring 2 pieces of ID. Married women, don't y'all know that when you get married and you change your name, that the name that you use may not match the name on your voter's registration? So if you don't actively go down there and change that name, your ID won't match the registration. Think about that. So because you change your name and your name doesn't match the registration, you may have to have another piece of ID. That's voter suppression, or is that common sense? The only people who could vote or who they wanted to vote who didn't have ID was immigrants. So they were all along trying to get the right so immigrants can vote. And now they came out and just admitted that they want illegal immigrants to be able to vote, to diminish your vote. But look what he says.
This reconstruction of the Jim Crow South, right? And so when we talk about this issue, when we talk about what Americans, what Democrats need to do, it's not just what Democrats need to do, it's what Americans need to do.
Right.
Whether or not Americans want to live in this reconstituted apartheid state. And unfortunately, what I see is most Americans willing to go along with it. When you look at how they are redistricting the maps in Louisiana or Tennessee, please note, they are not messing with white those states. There are white Democrats in Tennessee. There are white Democrats in Louisiana. I happen to be friends with one of them, right? Her neighborhood, their neighborhoods, they're being left alone. The neighborhoods that are being taken away are the black neighborhoods, the ones in Memphis, like you saw, like you showed in your opening. It's the black neighborhoods that are being split up and cracked. And so what they're trying to do is eliminate the congressional black caucus.
You mean the same Memphis that has the highest rate of violent crime and people losing their lives to violent crime, and one of the most impoverished cities in the country, the one where violent crime is 6 times the national average, that Memphis?
The Congressional Black Caucus has 67 members. Most of them represent the South, and those seats are the ones being targeted, being taken away. What do we do about it? I don't know, Allie. The last time we had a decision like this, the historical precedent for Louisiana versus Calais in 2026 is Plessy v. Ferguson in 1896. That is in terms of the racism that the Supreme Court has ushered in, that's your case, right? And when you look at Plessy v. Ferguson in 1896, what did it take to overcome that? And it took decades, generations of black people lived and died under Plessy v. Ferguson before 1954, when it was overturned-ish by Brown v. Board of Ed, and 1964 and 1965, when it was overturned legislatively by the Civil Rights Act and the now defunct Voting Rights Act of 1955. So that's the timeline we're looking at. When white people get it in their head that they are allowed, that they are, to use Trump's words, entitled to be this racist, that's the kind of generational long timeline we're talking about. And the way to overcome that is for establishment Democrats and the leaders of this country to take judicial reform seriously. That is the only way. What changed between 1896 and 1954? You had a different Supreme Court. And as long as you allow this conservative supermajority, this racist, this now provably racist conservative supermajority on the Supreme Court, as long as you allow them to hold power, nothing happens. Nothing changes. This is what they want. This is what they have the power to do. And until you take judicial reform seriously at all levels, then you lose at all levels. Democrats, look what happened in Virginia, which you brought up, right? Judicial reform at all levels. You had a 7-judge panel, 4-3, overturning a voter referendum of the people in Virginia. That court needs to be reformed, and the way that Virginia picks its state Supreme Court is wacky, just to be sure. So until
This guy reminds me of Bayard Rustin, who infiltrated Martin Luther King's movement, and he was a communist and duplicitous. This guy is acting as if he's not a Democrat. He's definitely not a Republican. He's a socialist with communist bent. And he's really not advocating for the black community like he says. He has another agenda, and it's expressed in his total character. I noticed it about him when I first seen him on Roland Martin. He's really covertly mad at the government based on their position on the LGBT trans stuff. He's not saying that. He's intermingling it with civil rights in the struggle of black Americans. And this is why I say they put immigrants and all these other movements in the civil rights, and they're mad and they're trying to inflame our communities, talking about our ancestors and what happened in the past, instead of looking at what's going on right now in the present. The Congressional Black Caucus has failed the very people who voted them in and looked to them for leadership. And his emotionalism shows you why we have to back away and step away from these people. They have no decorum. They're uncouth.
Can speak with one unified voice that we are going to reform this judicial system, Democrats will continue to lose at
So
every
what's
level,
the argument?
and black
I'm gonna-
people will continue to lose at
I'm going
every
to be
level.
talking to Kim Jeffries in a minute, and we can talk about what Congress needs to do. But what's the message to Americans who don't feel affected by this? I'm not in Tennessee. I'm not in Mississippi. I'm not in Alabama. I'm not in Louisiana. What's the way you motivate people to say this is actually your democracy coming apart? This is not. It's targeting black people, but it's once again. Once you put one of us in chains, we're all in chains.
Right. I mean, look, you can go to white South Africans who were living in Cape Town in 1975, and they were like, "I'm not on Robben Island. What does this have to do with me?" Right? Like that's your mentality there. If you are okay living in an apartheid country, then it doesn't have anything to do with you. I happen to believe that when one of us isn't free, all of us aren't free. And I happen to believe that the way that you stop Republican racism, the way that you stop these white supremacist decisions, is to reject them, is to put country over party, to put morality over party, and to reject the Republican agenda. But we see time and time and again, white Americans won't do that. The Democratic candidate for president has not carried the white vote since the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. That's not a phase. White people aren't going through a phase right now. They have decided since 1964 that the promise of a multi-ethnic, multiracial democracy based on fairness and justice is not a project they want to be in. And so the only way that we've had progress is by a coalition of black people, Latino people, Asian people, and the few whites of good conscience that they are.
You hear this agenda? This is why FBA is delineating. His rhetoric, his unglued mentality is tainted by by the elephant in the room. It's an elephant in the room. Watch his character. This is why men are leaving the Democratic Party. It's because it's full of these type of individuals. Emotional, over the top men.
To build a rising majority. That's the only way it's happened. And as we're seeing now with these new rules, unless white people get over themselves, unless they reverse themselves and their ancestors and their voting habits since the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, they will get exactly the racist country that they have long desired. So at some level, it's not even... Chris Rock has a great joke, right? Like, racism isn't a black problem, it's a white person's problem.
Right.
Like, y'all are the ones with the sickness, not me. Like, until white people heal thyself, this is going to continue happening again.
These are the leftists. These are the people who want to advise you, lead you, and inform you. Terrible. Terrible. Ever since I seen him and his allegiance with Roland Martin and those on the left, I knew everything about them was suspect. Not only are they selling out to the Democratic Party, they're selling out to socialists and communism, all under the guise of black identity. And this is Detroit's HPTV. Sound that you are Detroit. Like, share, subscribe, support the channel, become a member, because we want to start something based on self-determination and a community accountability. Become a member. Sign out Detroit. Peace. Y'all better keep y'all head on the swivel.